Hello, humans and more. Welcome, get in here. Let's talk. It is time to therapy. Come on. So, in this session, we are going to talk about a huge problem sometimes in this field, which is boundaries, right? And this conversation is for whoever needs to hear it, for whoever needs to hear it. That goes for clinicians, that goes for clients, parents of clients, guardians of clients, friends of clients, whoever needs to hear it. Whoever needs to hear it. Boundaries are a huge issue sometimes in therapy, and it is definitely a part of what could be that cause of what we like to call burnout, because you just kind of get so overextended, right? You overextend yourself as a clinician sometimes. So let's talk about that. The first thing is we are not friends. Let that sink in. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, because if we were friends, that would hinder the therapeutic relationship. We are in a relationship, but it is a therapeutic relationship. If I was your friend, that means that I would then now have a natural bias towards you, right? Now I'm too close. Now it's too personal. And once it becomes like that, boundaries have been crossed. Now, this gets tricky when you're working with kids, which is why I highly respect and commend those that truly work with kids and truly care about what they do. Because when I was working in child therapy, it was very difficult to maintain that boundary because you take that home with you. It's very emotional. It is very challenging. It will keep you up at night, right? I have stories in my head right now that will bring me to tears just at the thought of what was happening with some of these children. So that can be tricky, but it is important that you find some way to maintain those boundaries so that you can stay in that particular field and that you can continue to advocate for those children that need it. But just overall, it is so important to remember that, right? We are not friends. You don't want me to be your friend. You want me to be your therapist. You want me to be your sounding board. You want me to listen unbiasedly. You want to have that confidentiality, right? You don't want me to get to that level, because then we would have to cease ties in that way. That therapeutic relationship is no longer there. So, huge thing to remember, we are not friends. We are in a therapeutic relationship, and we're in it to help you get to the next stage in life where you are sustaining and maintaining, right? And whatever's going on with you is no longer affecting you in a way that it is inhibiting the way that you live your daily life or how you feel about yourself. That is my goal. That is my purpose. To be a helping professional, you absolutely have to care and have compassion towards your client, right? Every client that I've ever really taken on as a client, I care about them. I have a positive regard for them. I want them to be successful, but they have to want it more than I do, right? And I'm not perfect. There have been times when I've wanted their success more than they've wanted their success. I've been there. That's why I can talk about it. Boundaries are huge, right? Because you are going to wear yourself out. So boundaries. We are not friends. There's a rule, right, in therapy where you cannot see your family, you cannot see your friends. If I meet somebody through a friend and we build up this kind of rapport, even if it's for like a day or two, I cannot be their therapist. And I've had that happen a lot where I've met somebody like, man, I really like talking to you. Do you think I could see you maybe for therapy? And I'm like, no, I can't, right? Not because I don't want to, not because I don't think I can help them, but because we've now established a rapport, a relationship, even if it was for like a day or two or whatever the case was, we've established that outside of the therapeutic relationship. So now it's unethical. Now it's problematic, right? I've had cousins, hey, cuz, can I just talk to you? Can we have sessions? And I'm like, no, we could talk, but not in a therapeutic manner, not in that way, because then it's unethical, right? Then it's problematic because you're my family. I have a natural bias towards you. If you're telling me somebody's doing you wrong, I'm going to be like, yeah, you should, da, 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 da. It's personal for me. So you don't want that. You want somebody that could be unbiased, that could look at that situation top down and could kind of just oversee and understand from a perspective where they're not in the box. Okay. The second thing is names, right? I cannot tell you How many times I've had a client attempt, and I say attempt because I've corrected the behavior, but attempt to call me baby, sweetheart, sweetie pie. Now, obviously, it depends on the rapport because you will have different rapport with different clients, right? But I've had clients try to approach me in a way that was just very inappropriate, and they started that behavior in a grooming manner, and one of those manners was with the name calling, right? Oh, sweetie, okay. Oh, how you doing today, beautiful? Yeah, that's where we start to slow that down, right? Or, oh, you're so handsome. I'm sure you have all that, right? You want to be mindful of those kind of behaviors because you don't want to get caught up in a bad situation. Boundaries, right? Redirect the behavior, reframe it. Listen, I appreciate that you feel like we have this rapport, but I really prefer if you address me like this. Catch it at the beginning and just go from there. Okay. The relationship, again, it is a therapeutic one. We're not friends. I'm here with you in this. I'm here with you through this process because I care and I want to see you be great. I want to see you be successful 100%. I genuinely don't take on a client if I don't feel like our goals are aligned, if our energy matches. I'm that kind of therapist. I'm very particular. So if I'm with you, I want to see you be great, but let's not cross those boundaries. The next one is abusive language and abusive behavior. I tell my clients all the time, I'd rather you go off on me than to go off on somebody else because I can handle it. We could talk about it. We could work through it, right? But there's a difference between you venting and going off to me versus you venting and going at me, right? It's the difference. It's the difference between talking to me versus at me. Now, if I have a client going off cussing and they're like, yeah, F this, I hate that, and blah, 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 that's fine. Go ahead. Now, if the client goes, well, I don't give a F what you have to say and what you're talking about, we're getting shaky. And maybe I'll give you like 2 of those, right? It depends. It really does depend. I'm not going to say that it's the automatic. I'm not going to say that it goes on forever. But it really depends. It depends on the rapport. It depends on that client's diagnoses. It depends on their level of understanding about their behavior. Because as clinicians, we're dealing with a population that, you're going to see that. And sometimes it's not intentional. It's not intentional. Sometimes it's not. It may be at you that particular day, but it's really not for you. And you also have to understand that as a clinician. Now, whatever you choose to do with that information is on you. But for me, I think it's very much so subjective. It depends, right? But it is a boundary. And when you kind of take that boundary too far, there's no coming back. Right? I've had instances where that has happened and someone felt like, well, you're just going to have to understand that sometimes that's going to happen. And I'm like, no. I mean, it can happen, but it's not going to happen here. Like this, we're going to have to end this therapeutic relationship. But, you have to set those boundaries because that is what you will get. Behaviors, right? Your client, let's say if you're doing a virtual session and your client gets upset and now they're hanging up in your face. Or now they feel like they can just cross those kind of boundaries. You want to correct that too because you're setting a bad tone. And what you don't want to do is start to enable the behavior. So be mindful of that, right? Abusive language, abusive behaviors. That also gets tricky, again, when you're working with children, when you're working with teenagers, because they are kind of at that level where they are establishing where boundaries lie, right? That is one of the soul experiences of being a child in childhood, testing your boundaries, seeing how far you can go and where that lies. So being mindful of that too. I do take a little more grace and patience with teenagers, but also sometimes I don't. So yeah, it's subjective. So boundaries. All right. Moving into the next one, looking up your therapist. Oh, I've had some interesting situations. Um, you're in therapy to work on yourself, right? I understand the intrigue in knowing more about the person you're talking to, knowing more about their experiences, but it's about you. It's okay to ask your therapist questions, and sometimes your therapist may do a personal disclosure. I've done personal disclosures some at times, not all the time, not every time. It's rare, but when I feel like it may benefit my client to understand that, this is not just you, I will do a personal disclosure, or I will give them a personal example. But going to your therapist's social media, and this also goes for therapists, going to your client's social media, going to look up your therapist's information, their personal information, also goes for therapists, right? Looking up things that necessarily maybe your client isn't ready to share with you just yet or hasn't shared with you. Don't do that. Allow the relationship to mature in a way that rapport is built naturally, and what comes comes. But to go and seek out said information, that is a boundary, and it goes both ways. If your client has not told you something yet, or if the information did not come to you just yet, don't do it. Right? It's a boundary. Don't cross the boundary. All right? All right. So lastly, and there are many more, but these are like my top ones, right? So lastly, texting and calling. Now in this era of text therapy, which don't don't get me started. Please don't get me started on how I don't understand how that. Anyway, text therapy. In that era, I understand that your therapist may give you their number. You may give your client your number, but don't abuse that, right? The idea is you don't see your therapist every single day. You don't see them every single day, all day, throughout the day. Why? Because you're supposed to take this information that you learn from therapy and apply it into the world, and then see how that works first. Come back, let's share about it the next week and see how you handled it. If you are constantly reaching out to me, constantly calling, and I'm helping you, I'm giving you, I'm giving you, am I really helping you, or am I enabling you? Have you built a codependent relationship? Are we in a codependent relationship right now? Right? Because I'm not giving you out to the world to learn how to apply these tools. I'm holding your hand. Now, when something happens, you're calling, you're texting me, I'm answering like, oh, this happened? Okay, let me tell you what to do. Now it's problematic. Now we have a boundary that's been crossed again, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help you through the process, not to hold your hand and walk you through it. That's the step that you have to take. Again, you have to want it more than I do. And you have to be willing to actually do the work, right? 90% of the work, I would even say 95% of the work is you. When I have clients thank me and they go, thank you so much, Ms. K, you've been such a big help, da 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 da. I tell them, and any client that I have will tell you, I tell them, don't thank me. You did the work. You took the time. It's you. I just dropped some jewels here and there. I just sprinkled some stuff here and there. I planted some seeds in your subconscious mind, but you did the work, and I'm so proud of you, and I want you to pat yourself on the back. Don't pat me on the back. My joy genuinely comes from seeing my clients being so happy about how they have changed. That is more than enough for me, right? You're doing the work. You can't do the work if every time something happens, you have that access to call me, to contact me, to do X, Y, Z. It's not the same. Can you really feel accomplished like that? I don't think so. Like I said before, there's always a caveat. So the caveat to that is if you are in crisis. Now, call 911. But if you're not ready to do that just yet, and you just need somebody to talk to, I have absolutely done that before, right? We're talking about abusing that. Now, if you're in crisis, That's totally different. I've had clients call me 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, because they were in crisis, right? And they needed that conversation. They needed that help. Absolutely. If I'm up, if I catch it, if I see it, I'm going to answer. I'm going to talk to you. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get you to where you need to go if that's what needs to happen. I'm going to call for a wellness check. We're going to do whatever we need to do to make sure you're in a safe space, right? That's not abusive. I don't feel like that's crossing a boundary. But when it becomes excessive, it's abusive. Okay? So don't cross that boundary. Just be mindful, right? We're here to help. You want your therapist to help. So let's make this relationship work together. The last thing I do want to say about that, and like I said, there are so many other boundaries that we could talk about here, like a lot. I'm only covering like my top ones. So the last one I want to cover is, and it's really a one-off. It's like a little, like a little side note. Constantly rescheduling, that becomes a boundary issue, right? If you are constantly making plans to meet with your therapist and vice versa, and you are constantly rescheduling, canceling, rescheduling, canceling, that's a boundary issue, because somebody else could have had that time slot that you affirmed you wanted, right? Also, your client could have had something else that they could have been doing, or your client could have scheduled that time because that was the time that they had and they really wanted to get that help, and you're constantly rescheduling. They may be taking time off of work. They may be taking time away from their children. Be mindful, be respectful. Don't cross the boundary, right? That is huge too. So that's it, you guys. Be kind to each other. Be peaceful. Be genuinely nice, great human beings as much as possible. Don't let people take advantage of you.